All right, welcome to the Word and Spirit podcast. Today we're going to be talking about money and finances. Maybe I lost some people already just by saying that, but well, it'll be a good conversation. We have a special guest here, Reuben Lapp. He is an assistant pastor at our church, and he also owns businesses, so he's going to talk to us about finances and money tonight. So if you want to kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little about your background, family, business life, and all that, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, it's an honor to be a part of this podcast tonight. Thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Reuben Lapp, and married to my wife, Mary Ann. Coming up here 30 years here shortly. So I'm very grateful for my wife. And we have 9 children, 3 married, 5 grandchildren. So everyone's a tremendous blessing to our family. We all love each other and care for each other and just be there for each other. So I do own a couple businesses. I sold a couple here recently over the last year and a half, 2 years, and it was very interesting being a part of business with my dad. He entrusted me with a lot of things and gave me many opportunities to do what I needed to do to really grow the business with my dad. He gave me a lot of responsibilities at a very young age, and I'm very, very grateful for that he was able to trust me with finances and making business decisions and so forth. That was in my late teens, early 20s, that he gave me those types of responsibilities. And I actually bought into my dad's business when I was 21. He sold 10% of his shares to me at that point, way back then, over 30 years ago. The price was very good, and I was able to pay that off pretty quickly. And at the same time, over that time, soon after we got married, and then we built a new house, and Dad helped me with the finances for that and was able to pay that off by the time I was 26, 27. And just sort of grew from there in the business and just helped my dad do what he needed to do and took responsibility at a very young age, like I said. And I just want to encourage people to do that. Step in, do what needs to be done, help your dad, especially if you're in your dad's business, in partnership with him. Put your all into it. And even if you're not in partnership with your dad, you're in partnership with somebody else, or you're working for somebody else, put your all into it, because that's going to help you to elevate yourself in positions within the company, wherever you're working at. So that's done a lot for me. So I'm very grateful for, Dad training me in that way and doing what I needed to do. And so as you grow in business, there's many challenges, many opportunities that you have to face on a regular basis. And my dad was there with me, helping me through those challenges. And after a bit, he pulled away more and more, and I took on more responsibilities in my 30s. And it got to a place where I was able to pretty much do everything, and my dad was able to do other things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. I'm 52, and I'm at that stage right now in my life. And 30 years later, it's wow.
Yeah.
You got your children. We have 4 sons in the business with me, and they're taking on responsibilities. I put a lot of trust in them, and it's amazing what the younger generation does with trust. You entrust them with, running things, working with people, taking responsibilities, and you allow them to make mistakes, do what they need to do, and you're right there with them, helping them if they, face challenges. So that's very interesting for me to see that happen. And I just want to encourage everybody to think about that, especially parents giving responsibilities to their children.
Hmm. So would you say your dad did a very good job of like training you how to do like how to handle finances and how to do these things, but also kind of let you figure stuff out on your own, kind of a good balance of both of those.
Yeah.
And that was pretty instrumental in you growing in all of that.
Yeah. He came up with a lot of ideas, inventions. Back then, we started vinyl fencing. First of all, I'll just do a little bit of a history with my dad's business. He was in construction when he got married, and then he decided he wants to do things evenings at home and Saturdays. So he made dog kennels and dog boxes. And I was a young child then, probably 5, 6 years old, and I was out there in the barn with him while he was doing this, and it was a lot of fun. And then it got to a point where he let go of construction and started doing more other things. He did wood fencing, chain link fencing, chain link dog kennels. And then in the mid 80s, vinyl fencing became available, and he jumped on board with that as soon as it came out. So he was not afraid to try new things. He was an entrepreneur and just really dove into things that he thought make a lot of sense. So vinyl fencing was very new back then in the mid 80s. So the only way that he could get his first truckload was by buying it in full truckloads. And back then it came out of Nebraska. I remember very well when that first truckload came in. He had to go to the bank and make a loan for it. And so we put some fence around our place, our home place there at home. And while we were putting it up, we had all kinds of people stopping and checking it out, like, what is this? And that was very interesting. And soon, probably took a couple months to sell that load. And then soon after that, you got another load. And then somebody started another business up in Buffalo, New York, doing the same thing. So we started getting truckloads from there because of the freight. Mm-hmm. And then the only thing that was available back then was 5x5 posts, 2x6 rails for horse fence. So there was no gates, no caps, no brackets, nothing like that. So Dad actually designed all those different parts to make a fence complete. And so he came up with a lot of inventions. Then we started doing railings. We started doing more fence. And then by that time, I would have been in my teens, my low 20s. And we both came up with ideas as we went along. Porch post, round columns. Then aluminum fencing is when I took over the business. I started aluminum railing, aluminum fencing. So it just sort of went from one thing to the next. Mm-hmm. And eventually the wood fence went away, the chain link fence went away. And everything is vinyl for us as a family. In 2008, when I took over the business altogether, that was in 2007, then we had people wanting aluminum railing. So they came to us and said, hey, why don't you make an aluminum railing? And we were looking for something new right at that time. So I jumped on board with that right away and made our first aluminum railing, and that started to really take off. Mm-hmm. And then that was called Keeling. Then as of January of last year in 2025, I sold that business because it became big, and I didn't care for the corporate realm of things. So I sold that and focusing more on superior vinyl with the family. And so narrowing things, we expanded things and went through all that experience, and then we narrowed things back down again. Mm-hmm. because I really wanted our children to take a company or take what was built by my dad and I to the next generation, the third generation. So I'm the second, and our children are the third. And I really wanted them to be able to handle something that worked for them
Mm-hmm.
instead of this big corporate entity.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and now our children are all in with Superior. We have 4 sons, all working in Superior right now. 5 daughters. They're not in the business, but all 4 sons are having a good time, and it's a lot more of a family atmosphere, a
Yeah.
family business again, and we love it.
Mm-hmm.
So you go through all kinds of experiences, and you go through the experience, but you don't allow those experiences to, take you back, or like you failed or anything like that. Instead of looking at it as a failure, you look at it as an experience, and you keep moving on,
Mm-hmm.
keep moving forward.
How often do you take risk, or how often have you taken risk in business? Like, kind of stepped out into something.
So we did that a lot. My dad did that quite a bit, and then he tells people that I'm a chip off the old block. So I just keep on. I did the same thing. We came up with some ideas that failed, and failed miserably, and spent a lot of money trying to do it. An example is a vinyl split rail fence. So you see all kinds of wood split rail out there, but nobody made vinyl split rail. So that was a very big investment with tooling and stuff like that, and we hardly sold any because it was way too expensive. And so we've had failures, but we've had more successes than failures.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you're in business, sometimes you have those types of things you have to tend with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think for I don't know. Did you have anywhere you wanted to go with that?
Really?
I think we kind of want to talk about having kind of a vision for the future, especially from a young person's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a lot of not everybody has quite that vision that thinks out ahead, and I don't know that it's on purpose necessarily, but I think as young people we don't tend to think out even 5 years or 10 years. Like, we're very much in the moment. And so I don't know if you want to kind of talk into that, and like what as a young person should you be thinking about? Like, what are things that are important to think about?
So the importance for a young person to think about, I would say this is, you want to be a trustworthy individual. When you work for somebody, you want to put your all into the workplace. You want to make your employer as rich as you can. Might sound a little odd saying that, but
Mm-hmm.
you want to make him very successful. And it's not about you going to work. It's all about trying to make the business that you're working for very successful. So it means laying down your agendas, laying down your ways of thinking sometimes. It doesn't mean that you don't share your ideas. However, if your employer does not see it that way, then to be successful, you want to let it go. And you want to try and do what your employer is asking you to do. The other thing is, when your ideas don't get utilized, it's okay. And if they do get utilized, great. Then, you want to try and help him make that be a success. So either way, if your ideas don't get utilized or they do get utilized, you want to be successful at your job site as best as you know how. And if it's something that the employer may not be quite doing right, or his integrity level might not be as high as what you'd like to see it, then either you cope with it and do your best, or move on and find a different job. We've had employees where they didn't like the way we handled some things or did some things, and we're by no means perfect. We've made mistakes, and we didn't always do the right thing every time. But we tried to learn from our mistakes and not try to do it again. However, we've had some employees that left very upset and thought that, we have a low integrity level. I just had that experience here recently where an individual just, been working for us for a while, and he came into my office and said, "Hey, I'm quitting. I don't like the way you handle some things." And he basically sat me down and let me have it for about 30 minutes. So I let it go. I heard him. It's not the way I felt. However, he was allowed to express his feelings. I let him do that. And then he quit. It didn't take long, short time later. Now he's doing some other type of work for us. So I didn't get upset as an employer. And that's what you want to do as an employer. You never want to get upset. You never want to burn bridges. Because if you're the type of person that wants to just continuously burn bridges, then there's not many people that want to work for you.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be forgiving. You want to move on. You want to hear what the other person has to say. If there's areas that I need to improve on in my life, I will. I want to. It takes humility. And you just continue walking. And then we've had many others that really love it. They like what they're doing, and they wouldn't want to work anywhere else. And for us as a company, we don't have a problem giving people work that were in prison at one time, giving them a second opportunity. And many of them have done very well for us. And many of them have slipped and went back in their old ways again, where we had to terminate them. But then, they cleaned themselves up and they came back and they asked if they can come work for us again. They liked their job. They liked what they were doing. But it just seemed, sin grabbed a hold of some things and they went back in their old ways. And I don't have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
If a person wants to come and try and do better, by all means, let's work together and see if we can make this work. And it's great to see. We've had people in prison. I'll just share an example. One of our workers, one of our managers, was in prison at one time, and he came out and actually grew up the ladder, so to speak, in business, and he became a manager, managing people, managing processes, work, and all that. And then he asked me, he knew I was going into prison, he asked me if I would be willing to stop by and say hi to his cousin. So I did that right the next Wednesday morning. I had to wake him up. He came to the door. So a little bit of backdrop on prison. I'm a prison chaplain as well. Mm-hmm. And I go in there most times every Wednesday morning, sometimes Saturday nights, and have church service and so forth. And I really love it. It's a lot of fun. You see many opportunities in people. Mm-hmm. If you look at people, I tend to look at people and, what are the opportunities? Let's get that out of the people as much as possible. And so anyway, this gentleman asked me to stop by his cousin's cell and let him know that he has a high, that he wants to give him a high, that I would do that for him. And I said, sure. So when I went up to his cell, I didn't know the guy at all. His name, I won't mention any names, but he came to the door And I said, hey, I got a hi from your cousin. Your cousin works for me, and he's doing great. And then after a bit, he came out, got released from prison, and I didn't know it until he was working for us for maybe a month or two that he was the gentleman that I had been asked to say hi to.
No.
And so that was very interesting. And to this day, I have very good relationships with both of them. Today, they're both not working for me, which I'm okay with. They're working for the company that actually we sold Keylink to.
No.
So actually, the one is not. The other one is. But you never know what the Lord sort of puts in place. You have these different meetings that you have, meet with people and so forth. And so anyway, as a young person, I just want to encourage you to just do your best and work as hard as you can, work yourself up the ladder, take responsibilities, and do what you can to make your employer very successful.
So what do you say to a young person who's trying to find a job that they love and that they want to do for a long time, but they also don't want to be job hopping, so to speak. They want to stick at something, and like I think sometimes you can there can be a honeymoon phase when you get into a new job,
Yeah.
and then there's a kind of a period of time where you have to kind of work, and it's not always fun, and it's not every day is going to be fun.
No.
So what do you say to someone like that?
So job hoppers, I never really liked that idea of people just jumping from place to place. Um, yeah, there is this terminology where a new broom sweeps well. And when you find a new job and you like it for a couple of days, couple months, year or two, and then sort of that gets mundane, and you just want to move on, do the next thing. Uh, I would recommend that they stick it out. They go through the ups and downs, whatever might be happening in that business. Build a reputation, because you don't want that reputation where you're having a new job every year or every other year. Because as an employer, I shy away from hiring those types of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not, it's not stability. So what a young person needs to understand when they go and work for somebody, there's a lot of training that needs to take place, depending what the job is. So you're putting a lot of effort into that young person, training him or her, into a job or a position. And then after you did all that work and they go and work for somebody else a year from now, it doesn't build a good reputation. I think sometimes what young people don't understand is, for a lot of people, grass is greener on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
And it's not always the case. So you want to be able to stick it out, endure, fight, and try and build that reputation where you're at least 5 years working for somebody or more, 10 years. We have people working for us that are in, I think the longest one is 30 years, 35 years right now. And they don't want to go anywhere else. Now, we've had a lot where they came, 3 months, they left, job hopping all over the place. It's a lot of work for an employer to train. It takes a lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of effort, and I would not encourage that for a young person especially.
Yeah.
So what would be like, okay, so let's say you have you're a young person working at a job, and you have your employer or your manager, you have a really tough time getting along with them. Maybe there's things in their life that you're like, or the way they do things that you're not on board with or don't agree with, like what point is that become a big enough deal to leave or have a conversation with someone? Like if someone's in that kind of scenario, like how do you handle that?
That's a good question. So sometimes it's necessary to go to your higher ups, like maybe your manager, your um, operations guy, if, depending on what kind of business he's working in, or even the employer himself, the owner himself, and just have that conversation. Uh, there will always be challenges at the workplace wherever you work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's a great workplace in the beginning, and it sort of gets mundane, like, why am I working here? And sometimes the manager that he may be working for, he just doesn't get along with. So there are those challenges, and if it's that type of challenge, then I don't blame that person to try and find another job.
Mm-hmm.
But I would still encourage the person to try and stick it out.
Mm-hmm.
Give it, a couple months. Maybe it's something that needs to change within himself, the employee, to try and make things work versus just blaming everything on the manager that he's working for.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's some things he needs to change in.
Yeah.
So it's not, I guess every situation is unique or different in some ways. But yeah, there's challenges like that.
Yeah, that's good. Do you have any questions there?
Yeah, well, going back to, if you're constantly changing jobs, your benefits and your bonuses are almost non-existent
That's
because
right.
if you just work a year and then go somewhere else, you're starting over every couple of years. You're not building any goodwill up with your employer.
No.
And, in the Word, Scripture talks a lot about relationships with money. And, we think our occupation is just, that's not spiritual. Well, it's more spiritual than we would care to admit because it deals with pride and humility and, working with others and integrity.
Yep.
Being able to put a solid hour in every hour that you're clocked in. You're not always on your phone. There's a lot of things that your heart gets dealt with as an employee.
Yeah.
And it's a very good learning experience because if you want to be in any kind of ministry, it starts being a good employee for sure.
That's a good point on like the benefits. You lose a lot of benefits very quickly if you just go from job to job. Because the idea of benefits is you want the employee to stay. So you give them more and more and more benefits the longer they stay. So that's one motivator to try and, stick it out.
Yeah.
But the area in humility and apologizing, when you do make a mistake, even as an employer, especially as an employee, that goes a long ways.
Yeah. So switching gears kind of out of business into like saving and thinking about buying a home and investments and all of that, like I think all of that stuff can kind of be overwhelming as a young person.
Yeah.
Either you just choose not to think about it, or if you do think about it, it's kind of like, well, where do I start? What do I do? How do I even afford a house and all that stuff? Like what's a good starting point for someone that's thinking about that?
So when you think about savings, I try to work with our children, save your money, put it into a mutual funds, so much a month. So as an example, if you're 20 years old and you put $100 a month into mutual funds, and you do that every month for 40 years, that grows to like 1.17 million.
Wow.
In 40 years. That's with compound interest and all that.
Mm-hmm.
How about if you put $200 a month in?
Yeah.
That grows to 2.3 million in 40 years. Yeah, you might think, well, is that worth it? And it is worth it, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Our children are doing some of that, and some are more. And it's amazing what that does. So that's a mutual funds that you just sort of set to the side and just let accumulate. You just put $100 a month in, or 200, or even more, and just let that take care of itself. When you turn 60 or 65, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's ready for you, ready to use. So you do want to save up for retirement. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
I'm doing it personally. And as far as saving money as you're, working, there's a lot of money that can be spent stopping at the coffee shop, Wawa's, wherever. Some of these places where you can spend $20 a day,
Yeah.
and without realizing, it's $100 for 5 days. It's $100 a week,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
$5,200 a year, and it adds up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So my encouragement for a young person is save up as much as you can. Doesn't mean that you don't have fun. Doesn't mean that you don't spend, $20 a day here and there. But you want to have that mindset that someday you want to get married. You want to buy your own property, own your own home.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to just be renting, all your life. So there's a statistic I'd like to share with you, with the audience here. When you buy a property, say you buy a $440,000 home, you have 20% down. So that leaves us with $350,000 that you can probably put towards a loan. So 440 down to 350, that means you need to have $90,000 saved up. So for a young person to make his first initial investment as in a property, now this might be a little high in some cases, in some areas it's a lot lower than 440,000, might be 200,000 or 250,000. But you want to have 20% down before you buy a property, because that's what the banks are looking for. So if you pay 440,000 on a home and you have 20% down, that brings it down to 350,000. You put that on a 7% interest rate, and you put it on a 30-year loan, which is a long time. I don't recommend 30-year loans, by the way.
Yeah.
That makes your monthly payment $2,328. And then at the end of 30 years, if you don't pay any principal, any extra principal, you're actually paying $488,000 in extra interest only. So $488,000 on top of $350,000 as far as your initial investment, you're spending over $840,000 over the course of that 30 years.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
It's insane.
So you're spending over 125% interest.
Yeah.
Something like that.
It gets very expensive. Now here's the flip side. If you can afford a $440,000 home, you put $350,000 into a 30-year mortgage, 7% interest, same monthly payment. But if you pay an extra $1,000 per month, you're only paying $165,000 in interest, which you're saving $322,000 in interest,
Wow.
and you're bringing that loan from 30 years down to 11 years.
Wow.
By just paying an extra $1,000 a month.
Hmm.
It's crazy how the calculations all work out like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have a spreadsheet that I'd be willing to share with anybody that would like to have it, just to do a quick calculation of what loans, you can do a 20-year period, you can do a 10-year period. It calculates out what your monthly payments are. And then it also, if you can afford to do extra payments like $1,000 or $1,500, what that brings back as far as years are concerned and the interest savings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's big when you look at those types of numbers and years and interest rates and dollar amounts.
So you were saying mutual fund. So would you recommend you were saying mutual fund for retirement? So let's say, well, growing up Amish Mennonite, we start working when we're 15. So we have, I don't know, how old were you when you got married?
23.
23. So you would have had 8 years, but you went to high school, so you didn't have quite that long.
Yeah, I didn't quite have as
So
long.
let's say 8 years to save up for your house. Would you recommend putting money in a mutual fund for those 8 years, or would you recommend a more conservative investment? Because you want to use your down payment right away. You don't want to you don't want to use that money for retirement if you can use it for your down payment.
Right.
Or would you let that retirement go?
Personally, I would let that retirement go.
Okay.
I would put money in towards it.
Okay.
I would put $100 a month towards it.
And then separately save up for a down payment.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's actually something that David Ramsey recommends. And by the way, budgeting is not a bad thing for young couples, young couples that get married, or even young people as a whole. If they see where their dollars go towards and they keep track of that or budget, in some ways for that, they can soon tell, where they're spending their money and where they could be saving more. Dave Ramsey has a great budget template that I would recommend. There's others out there, but he seems to have a really good handle on how to make money by saving, putting in investments. You want to sort of create a portfolio of investments. You got mutual funds as an idea. You can do, money market in a bank. That's about 3.5% yield right now. You can do CDs. If you have extra cash and you don't really need it, you can put it in a 7-month, 9-month, 12-month CD. The bigger yield right now is a 12-month CD or more. And so those are, different options. The other thing I want to point out, as a young person, sometimes if we're not careful, even in my age, if I'm not careful, there's get-rich-quick schemes out there, and you sort of jump for some of those. And they tell you what your return on the investment looks like or could look like. I've jumped into a couple of those, and every one of them failed for me. I put something into one where I got my money back but nothing extra. Then I put it in something else or a different thing, and I lost, a lot. So when it comes to those types of investments where you want to put money towards something that might sound like have a really good return, you want to be able to afford to lose it, or just don't do it. I've had a situation. There's a lot of people that invested with a certain person's recommendations, and a lot of those went south. And I just told that guy, he's still my friend. I still look up to him as a friend. I told him I don't hold him accountable for anything. It was my responsibility. I was willing to take the risk. And, nothing on him. It was my risk. If I could not afford to lose it, then it was on me. So you want to be able to afford to lose if you do those types of investments.
So would you say a young person especially if you're not married, can be a little riskier with investments because they can't afford to lose because they're younger, so they have time to kind of recover. Does that Would you kind of say there's a truth to that or not really?
I wouldn't recommend it.
No.
Not for a young person, especially if he's thinking about buying a house. Like I mentioned earlier, those types of investments, for the most part, are not good investments.
I remember years ago we invested in some mutual funds, and they had two separate ones. They had like a growth fund, which was pretty stable, and then they had a fund that they invested in like more aggressive investments, and it fluctuated like a lot. Like one year it was 30%, and the next year it was like 1%.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't recommend doing that either.
Well, that's part of where our monies go towards when we do mutual funds. We're actually working with a wealth advisor,
Okay.
and he's doing the investing for us. So what he does is he calls it the Timothy funds, where he's investing in companies, our money that we put in, say $100 a month. He's taking that money and investing it into companies that are Christian based.
Okay.
Now you can also invest that money, or he could, in other companies that are not Christian based and probably get a bigger yield on your return. But we chose as a family not to do that. We chose to just keep with the Christian based companies. And that yield right now for this year has been around 18 to 20%.
Okay.
And that would be more of a conservative, like a
Yeah.
like long-term growth.
Now there are people that invest in, the other bigger companies like Apple and Caterpillar and all these big companies, and they've done quite well. I'm not saying it's wrong investing in those companies, but morally for us, we just chose to follow the Christian companies more.
Right.
So, how safe is it to get into individual stocks?
Personally, for me, I never went into individual stocks. I know a good friend of ours that does that, and he's done quite well. And I don't know how to do it, so I just choose not to take that route, I guess.
'Cause I've heard I think like I've had conversations already with people about this, but if you're like a lot of young people, it's kind of tempting because it can be. I think it can almost be a high if you're doing those individual stocks and you're seeing these these returns and stuff. But I want to say 99% of those people don't know what they're doing, and at the end of the day, they might make money on one investment, but they're going to lose it on the other one, and they're going to come out even.
Yeah.
Or if not losing money.
Yeah.
So I've seen that. I think there's a little bit of a temptation. Like it's pretty cool to do, but it's not very safe.
It's like crypto. Crypto's cool to invest in right now.
Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend crypto.
No.
None of them. Yeah.
You can do these types of investments, but then if you're not careful, you get your head wrapped around these types of things, and it drives you nuts. Something doesn't work out. Well, what are you going to do, with that?
But it comes down to motive, too, because I know when I was younger, I was involved in stocks, and I just felt like the Lord was leading me out of that. It wasn't healthy. Not that I would have been losing money, but it just wasn't where my focus. He didn't want my focus there.
Right.
And I could have seen myself really get wrapped up into it. I mean, I like talking about financial stuff.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Well, that brings up a pretty important thing to talk about probably is so how do you stay kingdom focused but also not stick your head in the clouds? I think it can be tempting to be like, well, God's going to take care of me. I don't need to think about this stuff. But that's not a right mindset. But then you also have to be careful that you're not getting into greed or into you're so focused on money that you're everything else in your life is suffering.
Mm-hmm.
We've had situations that we walked through back in our earlier years before the downturn of the economy in '07. 2006 was our best year in business. And, we made a lot of money. And you can sort of get to the point where you got this,
Yeah.
you know what you're doing,
Yeah.
and pride can set in pretty quickly. And you can get to the place where, you get into the clouds a little bit. But I've come to the place where, you know what, it's business. Yes, you want to make money in business. That's why you're in business. But it's not the only reason. The big part that I see in business is if you're making money, we've had months where we did not make money. And that's not fun. But if you're making money, you don't want to forget about tithing. You don't want to forget about offerings. You want to be able to bless other ministries, especially if you're a Christian.
Yeah.
And you want to think about those things instead of just thinking about how can I create my own kingdom. Because when, we've been there and done that. We sort of created our own kingdom in some ways, and it's not. So here's a good question. So if you're really blessed in business, does that mean that God is blessing you?
Maybe.
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 In some cases, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's in all cases that way.
Right.
Just because you're successful in business doesn't necessarily mean that God is, in it.
Right.
I don't think Jeff Bezos is super godly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, so when you are successful, which there's a lot of successful business people in Lancaster County. And our philosophy in business, I'm teaching our sons this as well, which they know this. Give 10% away when you make a profit. Like there's months that you make money and months that you don't make money throughout the year. Those that you make money, let's give. And those that you don't make money, then there's nothing there to give.
Yeah.
But you don't want to forget about the necessities of ministries that your church might be involved with. And you want to help those types of ministries, grow and enhance the kingdom of God. Why are we doing business? Why are we here on earth? Why are we making money? It's to enhance the kingdom of God. It's the type of mindset that we want to have.
So how would you balance being faithful and giving and then also, saving money so that you have a down payment that if you want to buy a house and you're getting married in the future?
So there are examples where young people have not been tithing, and then they started tithing, and what God did for them when they started doing that, it seemed like things turned the corner for them.
Right.
Where they started making money, they were able to save, they were able to put money back, and it's great to see that. So you cannot, Brother Rhodes, for example, he mentioned that you cannot afford not to tithe.
Yeah.
And you give 10%. So if you give that 10%, the Lord will, I believe strongly that the Lord will help you through some difficult times.
I think there's kind of a tendency to go on one extreme or the other. So I know when we first got saved, some of the younger guys from church, maybe it was just me, but it was almost like a guilt that I'm saving money because, well, Jesus is going to come back, so why are we piling up money? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have that extreme, and then the other extreme is like, well, I'm going to save everything I got. Like, why am I tithing? What's the point? Like, how do you thread that needle of, preparing to start a family one day and then still being faithful? And I think you had in your notes, you recommend 10% tithing and then 10% tithes and offerings. That's kind of a number that you shoot for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I shoot for that. I'm actually shooting for higher right now, Can I give more than just 10%?
Right.
I don't want to say just 10%, but can I give more than 10?
Right.
And being able to go on missions trips, for example. Here's advice for a young person. You want to save up for that, be able to do that a time or two, or however the Lord leads. You don't want to focus on the community to help you
Yeah.
raise money to do that.
You talk about fundraisers.
Yeah. I don't care for fundraisers myself. It's a lot more valuable to me if I put my own money into it.
Yeah.
When I go on a missions trip, it seems like I can get more out of it.
Right.
I'm not depending on other people to pay my way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But in that, I don't know. I want to be careful how I say this because you don't expect people to give. But in that, I think the people that I've seen, and even in my own life, when you are providing your own way and you're fully expecting that, it's actually amazing. A lot of times God does bless you, and He does repay you.
Yeah.
In different ways, whether it is somebody does actually give to you afterwards or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is important to be. We need to be funding ourselves.
Yeah. The other thing with money is faith. You don't want to forget about faith, putting money and faith together.
Mm-hmm.
I've had instances in business where I had to put my faith in God. Not everything went perfect. So you just trust God, you pray, you ask God for mercy and favor, for His grace to come and help us. That's what grace is, asking God to help you. And I've experienced that in 2007 in business and again in 2024. And it's amazing what happens when you put your trust in God. You just know that it's right.
Mm-hmm.
And you just go ahead and do it. Even though it doesn't make sense logically or even with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So that was quite interesting. Now, I can't say that happens every year.
Yeah.
Sometimes you also need to do things logically. Doesn't mean you just shoot for the stars and think it's going to work out, because sometimes it doesn't.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
You want to have that type of relationship with the Lord that you know that it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but one of the preachers that we've been around, he made the comment that, if your finances aren't in order and this ministry opportunity comes up, like, you don't want that to happen.
Right.
Like, you want to be able to, when a door opens, that you can walk through that door.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we as Christians, we're kind of, we're all about, well, I'm just living by faith. I don't need to save money. Well, see how that works out for you.
That's right.
Like, when the opportunity comes, the money's going to be there. Well, maybe not. Maybe God wants to teach you some discipline and, that kind of thing. So I think there's kind of that balance there. There is times when He wants you to walk by faith and might want you to give money that you don't think you have, or do things that you think you might not be able to afford. But
yeah,
I know Brother Hogan he's very much against credit cards and credit and debt and that kind of thing too. It's like, yeah, if you're in debt, how are you going to be able to be a blessing in the mission field?
Yeah.
The borrower's servant to the lender.
That's right.
So
That's right. Very much.
it can be a problem if ministry opportunities come up and you're so much in debt you can't do anything. So
yeah, here's another thing for a young person to think about, and that's car debt.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Buying your first car. It doesn't have to be a new car. It can be a used car.
yeah,
Something that you can afford to pay and pay off quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of thinking it has to be fancy, new, the latest model and all that.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's one regret I had. I bought a new vehicle back. What was my second car? I forget, but early on, and I could have saved 20,000 easy,
Oh yeah.
and that was back when 20,000 was a lot of money. You know, probably like 50,000 now. Maybe not 50, but 30, 40. So buying a new car is one of the worst investments you can make.
Yeah.
Well, it's not an investment. One of the most. Yeah.
I have yet to buy and drive a brand new vehicle off a lot. It just goes hard against my grain to do that.
Yeah.
So we've always bought used vehicles. Now the latest one that I got, just to give you an illustration, a new price versus a used price, even though it only had 17,000 miles on it, but from new to what I paid for it was about $17,000 less.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a number. I forget what it is, but it's like I think it's over half the value is lost when you drive it off the lot,
Yeah,
brand new. Like
it's a lot.
Yeah.
It
And
depreciates.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's the thing I was thinking about coming here for this podcast. So you buy a new vehicle, you put a loan to it, and the moment you drive it, every time you drive it, the depreciation goes down on the vehicle,
Yeah.
and you're paying more on the vehicle because of all the interest you have to pay.
Right. Yep.
So it's like it's an opposite.
Yeah. I like what Ramsey says. He says we spend money we don't have to impress people we don't like. No. We buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like.
Yeah,
It's true.
very true.
It's true.
'Cause a lot of the high ticket items we buy, it's about impressing other people.
Yeah.
It's not that we really need it. It's like, well, this looks more impressive if I buy this car. So
I heard someone say, I think it was this week, he said that a good test when you go to buy something is, would I buy this if nobody would ever know that I have it?
yeah, true.
Good point.
It's a good test.
Yeah.
Or wait 30 days. I don't know if that was Ramsey's thing. He said if you're buying a big, high-priced item, just wait 30 days. And if after 30 days you still feel like, you want to buy it, because a lot of times those feelings kind of subside, if you just wait a little bit.
Yeah, that's
Like,
right.
oh, yeah, I can live without that. I don't need that.
Sleep over it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your, in the things that, all the stuff that you're involved in, like how important do you place, like what's your value system as far as like your family and business and church and ministry and your relationship with God? Like how do you like level these things, and where's like priorities and all of that?
So before I was born again, it was a lot to do with money, making money, putting my all into business. And when I did that, I neglected my family, church, God. It was about making money. So when I became born again in 2005, a lot of that changed. Talking about faith in 2007, that's when the business got transferred over to me from my dad. That was at a point where I left the business go. So sometimes when you let go, then God can do his work. And then that's what happened with the transfer of the business from my dad to myself, from to the second generation. So I look at that and I see what God did, and I see the value of having God first, family second, ministry and work, third and fourth. It's so important, because if you have those priorities in place like that, there's a lot of blessings that come with that, especially with the wife and children. So the wife and children know very quickly if you're really engrossed in your business, and it's all about business. They feel second, can you imagine how God feels,
Yeah.
when you do that? So I made a priority that, you know what, with everything that we're doing, I don't have to do everything that we're doing. I don't have to, be the biggest guy on the block in business. It's more important for me to serve God and to be with my family and do ministry work, like going into other countries and doing ministry work, than it is just to make money. Money plays a big role in everything,
Mm-hmm.
but having your priorities in place is a big deal to God and to your family. So
Yeah.
I would just encourage anybody to really think about that
Yeah.
when it comes to, prioritizing what is most important.
Even when you're going into investments and doing things, I've learned from experience that if your heart is after greed or like the wrong motive for making that investment, your tendency to make a wrong decision is much higher.
Yeah.
But if your heart is, well, you just want to be led by the Spirit and want to do what God's plan is for your life, well, your chance of making good investments is much higher. Like,
Yeah.
I've noticed that very much. Like, the motive of your heart is a very good indicator of whether your investment is going to be a success or not.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. Integrity and keeping our hearts clean is so important.
It's an everyday part of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else? Anything else you wanted to cover?
I know there's a lot of people in business that are in our network of churches, and I just want to encourage everybody to think about the priorities in life,
Mm-hmm.
like we just talked about. Because when your priorities are straight and they're in line with the Word, there's a lot of blessings that come with that. There's doors that open up. I'm experiencing doors opening up right now that I never dreamt, could open up. And being faithful in the little things, then God wants to entrust more in you to be faithful in bigger things. And so I'm experiencing that today, and it's actually stretching me quite a bit. But it also, at the same time, I know that if I put my trust in God, He's going to help me through.
Mm-hmm.
If I think about it too far in advance, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? Then you can almost like think yourself out of it. Like it's not possible.
Yeah.
But if you take one day at a time, you think about, what the Lord might have in store for you and where He wants to lead you, and you just want to follow, what the Lord's leading us.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's other people speaking into your life. And I would encourage, especially young people, there's a lot of trials and tests that a lot of young people go through because they think they know what they're doing. Where if they would find a mentor that they can trust to help them along life's way and ask questions, it could save a lot of heartaches in the long run. So that would be my encouragement to every young person, every older person. Find someone you can trust, confide in them. There may be sometimes confessions that need to be made. Confess, it's not a big deal. The mercy of God is there. I was down in Peru for 2 weeks with 2 other young people. One was our son. Another one was a friend of ours. And we had a great time. In the first week, we had leadership meetings. at the end of the leadership meetings, the main person that was leading our team talked about confession.
Mm-hmm.
And he encouraged the people there, which were mostly apostles, to, if there's any confessions you need to make, let's do it. Bible talks about you confess your faults one to another, that you may be healed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
The Bible, what's in the Word, works.
Yeah.
So there was actually something I confessed to someone down in Peru, which was actually I confessed it to my interpreter. And, it was humiliating. It was humbling. But I knew that I could trust him, that he's not just going to tell other people,
Mm-hmm.
my confession.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to find a person that you can trust that's just not going to spread it around to other people.
Yeah.
And be willing to be open and honest.
Yeah,
Goes
that's
a long
good.
ways.
Yeah. Anything else? Do you have anything to say?
I had a couple verses. I don't know where they are, but I think they're in Timothy. So the one that people talk about a lot is the love of money is the root of all evil, and they're like, money is evil. No, it says the love of money.
Yeah.
So if we keep our perspective correct, I think we should be able to use that, because I see a lot of, like you said, we have a lot of business owners in our network of churches, and for the most part, they're very generous, and I see that as a blessing of the Lord being on their business and on their life. And the other one is, I think that's also in Timothy, it says that the Lord giveth richly all things for us to enjoy. So I don't feel like we should feel guilty for having these blessings.
No.
Now, if they're in the wrong order, yeah, but you look at third world countries and like, well, they don't have nothing. Why do we have what we have? Well, it's not like we should feel guilty about it. It's a blessing, and we enjoy it, and where we can, we give to people that are poor and that have less than what we have.
Yeah. Then when you go to missions, like for example, I mentioned Peru a little bit before. So they're a very poor people group. And so they depend a lot on American finances. So we paid for the conferences that we had down there. We paid for the food, the housing, to bring the people in. Paid for the cooks. We paid everything.
Mm-hmm.
The boat ride, we were on the Amazon River. Paid for the boat ride, paid for the fuel, paid for the drivers. Everything was paid by American money for that whole 2 weeks that we were down there.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to do that is a huge blessing.
Yeah.
We were able to speak into their lives. They really appreciated it. And there were some pastors there that were thinking about quitting.
Wow.
And just for us to go there and be an encouragement to them, it took money.
Mm-hmm.
And be able to do that was, a tremendous blessing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. It's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of practical things with money that it's good to know and to keep perspective on, especially for young people. Not having a mindset of just living in the moment, but trying to keep your perspective. Well, I mean, keeping your relationship with God is a high priority, but keeping perspective for the future and not just expecting things to work out without any kind of stewardship or putting work in. And so, but at the same time, there's room for enjoying life and enjoying the blessings that we have and all of that. So there's definitely a balance there, but I think it's good to keep all that stuff in our perspective.
Yeah.
So I think unless anyone has anything else to say, I think I'm done. Okay. And we'll conclude with that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Good to be here.